Welcome to episode 212 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today, we're going to be discussing the ski resorts of Valle Nevado and Portillo in Chile, finding out what it's like being a resort rep for the Ski Club of Great Britain, and checking in on a new possible direct London to Geneva train service. My name's Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'm delighted to welcome freelance journalist Lou Cameron Hall for her first time on the show. Hi, Lou. How are you?
Hi, Iain. I'm good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And my second guest today joins us for her third appearance on the show. Martina Diez-Routh has a lot of strings to her bow. She's an artist and snow sports blogger, a Aosta Valley and South America expert. Hi, Martina. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Now, a question I like to start off with my guests is to ask you when you skied or snowboarded last. It seems quite a long time ago now that I was in Ladies Out. Lou, when were you last on snow?
I was last on snow about a month ago out in February.
What was the snow like there?
It was good. It was good. There was some late season powder. It was a mixed bag, but we've had some good off-piste snow, and probably Outer Badia was the best week this year in the Dolomites.
Yeah, well, Dolomites, somewhere I've never been to, on my bucket list, and I'm thinking that it might actually come together next winter, but that's another story. Martina, what about yourself? When were you last on snow?
I've been 2 days ago in the Hemel Hempstead, if that counts, in the event of Robert Stewart.
It definitely counts. Any snow at any time is good.
In April, then I've been for the Mountain Travel Symposium, Palisades, Tahoe. And it was good, just straight from the Aosta Valley. So I was coming from Aosta, from Pila, we were skiing. Skiing was good, was like April was really hot. So you have like only a short window when the snow was okay.
Right. Well, the regular ski season is wrapped up now in Europe. You can still ski in various places this summer. I'll put a link into the show notes to a great article by regular guest Katie Bamber that appeared on We Love to Ski. Last week covers lots of different options, which include at different points during the summer, Zermatt, Saas-Fee, Teen, Val d'Isère, Hintertux, and Ladies Out. I'm hoping to get a quick ski in at Ladies Out before they close in early July. So watch this space. Lou, have you ever been summer skiing in Europe?
Do you know, I haven't yet been summer skiing in Europe. I would love to do one of Chemi Alcott's Hintertux camps, but I've skied summer skiing further afield, been out in Chile. But I look forward to that one day.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that. I don't know if you can count it as summer skiing because it's obviously their winter, but we're going to look at Chile later. What about yourself, Martina? Have you skied in summer
Not
skiing
really.
in Europe?
No, in Europe, no. South America, yes, but not in Europe. We could technically, because I have the place where all the summer in Morges is 1 hour 14 from Cervinia, but we should be waking up too early. And to be honest, when I can sleep, I don't wake up early to go skiing. It's too much.
That is one of those points about summer skiing. You need to get up there early on the mountain. I remember going in Saas-Fee in 2020. It was such a brilliant trip. It was in that gap after lockdown. If you recall, we had our lockdown from I think March until June or May or something like that. And I went out to Saas-Fee, and I remember having to wear a mask, the whole time on the journey on the way out there. And I got to Saas-Fee and I was able to take it off and breathe in the mountain air. And I went skiing up there and bumped into Dave riding on the glacier. But when I went up, I was mindful of the fact that about 3 hours earlier was when all the racers, had gone up there. You've got to get up early if you want to do, skiing on the glacier and to get the most out of it. I had about an hour of skiing. Anyway, you mentioned the Southern Hemisphere. Winter is just starting up. They've had their first snow in Australia and New Zealand. And in Argentina, a resort called Catedral opened 3 weeks early. And we're going to be talking more about South America shortly. But firstly, let's catch up with a little bit of news. Sadly, I have to report the chalet company Alpine Action has ceased trading. They had been in business since 1993, but complications from Brexit ultimately pushed them over the edge. And, we've discussed this in previous episodes. It was quite a major factor, the loss of freedom of movement. I'd recommend listening to episode 180 if you want to find out more about the impact on recruitment. And we've got lots of different episodes covering how Brexit has affected things. A good one to start with is episode 95, when I chatted with Diane Palumbo from Ski World. But chalet holidays are not over. There were some really interesting stats at Listex Online recently in the latest Ski Club of Great Britain consumer survey. I summarise those in a blog on Skipedia, and I'll put a link to that into the show notes. And another idea that's cropped up recently is a youth mobility scheme, which has been proposed by France and some other European nations. I see that Rishi Sunak, was less keen on it, but not sure how long Rishi Sunak will be in charge. We found out yesterday here in the UK there's going to be a general election on the 4th of July. So keep our fingers crossed that youth mobility scheme might happen in due course. Now, in more positive news, regular listeners will know I'm a huge fan of train travel. The flight represents 60 to 70% of the carbon footprint of your ski holiday, and traveling by train has just 10% of that impact. So I was really, really pleased to see that Ingham's reported recently that they sent 1,000 guests by train to 17 of their 70 resorts last winter. Now, those absolute numbers are very small, but I really admire the work that Ingham's are doing. There's a lot of greenwash around in the industry, but it's definitely not coming from them. And their goal is to increase that figure 100% year on year. And you can find out more about Ingham's sustainability plans in episode 185 and also episode 160. But regular listeners might recall I mentioned a possible London to Geneva direct train service a couple of episodes ago. A petition had been set up calling for this service. So I tracked down the person who set that up, Nadine McCormick, and recently I spoke to her. So let's have a listen to that. Right, I'm really excited to be chatting just now with Nadine McCormick. Nadine is based in Switzerland, and the reason for her location will become apparent in a minute. Hi, Nadine. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm very good, and I was very keen to speak to you, and thank you very much for taking the time to fit this in. You recently set up a petition. I mentioned it in a previous episode of the podcast, and it is a petition to try and get a direct train link started between the UK and Switzerland. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what motivated you to get that petition set up.
Yeah, no, happy to. So yeah, it's actually just about coming up to 2 months ago when I first read an article stating that, yeah, there is an interest to have a direct train between London and Switzerland. I think to my horror then, given that I live near Geneva, that the proposed route was going to be towards Basel. And I just remember the time like, what? That's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It can't go to Basel. It must come to Geneva. Surely there's more demand for Geneva. And then lo and behold, later in this article, it quoted a politician who has the same idea, a local politician here who was quoting some passenger numbers that are greater between Geneva and London than Basel and Zurich combined. So it's like, yep, sold. I reached out to this politician. It was a Saturday afternoon. He replied in an hour and said, oh, thank you so much for your support. Yes, I think a petition would be a great idea. I'm happy to help in any way that I can behind the scenes so it can be seen as a citizen petition. And yeah, that's where it all started.
Excellent. Well, I mean, you may be aware that the Eurostar direct service from the UK to the Alps restarted again this winter. It's been punctuated a little bit since COVID, but it did run last winter, not for as many dates as we'd like, but for British skiers and just for travellers in general who want to go to Europe, being able to travel by train rather than flying would be really advantageous, because I think many people listening to the podcast would probably be familiar that the carbon cost of traveling by train is so much lower than flying. I think, different figures, but normally I would quote around 12% perhaps of the carbon cost of flying. Would you agree with that, Nadine?
Yeah, the research we did around the petition, I saw for that particular route would be a 15%, 1/15th, we should say, 1/15th of the emissions from compared to a flight for Geneva, London. Yeah.
Yeah, so even less. I might be including the transfer from the airport to the resort within that. But so I had a little look earlier, and I noticed that the number of signatories on the petition is now up to 5,640. And because it's crossed that 5,000 threshold, that means that you've moved into the next stage. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. When I say we, so then this kind of mini little informal group from this politician guy, a couple of people who were like, he has been supporting and advisors. I had no idea. To be honest, our first target was like, oh, if we could get 500, that would be amazing. And we were advised, well, maybe 2,500, 3,000 would be a good target to get attention. So in the end, well, the 3,000 helped us trigger a press release. So I sent out my own press release, which is quite bizarre. That triggered more than, I think I've lost count, but it was like 13 articles at one stage in English, in French and Italian. That helped then trigger to get to 5,000. In the article, we said if we could get to the 5,000, we would send letters then with the petition to the key groups that are involved in making this decision at the end. So indeed, that's what happened. I think 8 letters we sent across all the different governance structures within Switzerland. As you can imagine, there's many, plus the Swiss train company too.
Yeah, so you've got the different cantons who are getting involved, but importantly, the Swiss train company as well. So they're aware that there's a large body of people out there, and I will put a link to it in the show notes because it's definitely not too late to sign that petition as well. How likely do you think it is that this lobbying will actually lead to a direct service between the UK and Switzerland and vice versa?
So I believe that talks are advanced to have that direct link between Switzerland and the UK. So the national government level of governance has expressed an interest because of Brexit, and Switzerland, who is also not in the EU, are really keen to have strong economic ties between the countries. So they are keen to have that direct route. So there will be, I really think there will be a direct train. They took around within 4 or 5 years. Where it goes, though, is it Basel or Geneva? That's still up for grabs, which is why it's still not too late to sign that petition to show, I think, really to show that there is a market interest in having Geneva as the main connection, because as the head of the Swiss train company, so SBB CFF FFS, as he said, actually, I know politicians are debating this train link between Switzerland and the UK, but it's not politicians that decide, it's the market. So I'm really encouraged that, the train company see that Geneva is the option.
Well, certainly I am a little biased because I tend to travel into Geneva quite a lot. And certainly for many skiers, it is the gateway to so many ski resorts. I think that, I've been through Geneva by train from Paris several times, and I know there already is a customs hall there, isn't there? When you get off the train from Paris, no one ever seems to check your passports, but I guess that wouldn't really matter if you've started in London because you've had your passport checked already. It would be on the way back, I guess, where the issue would be. But they used to check passports there in Geneva, right?
Yeah, no, they used to. So actually, I should have checked before coming on this podcast, but Switzerland didn't used to be in the Schengen zone. So when I first came to Switzerland 20 years ago, that you would get your passports checked. You just go over the border and we're surrounded by France here in Geneva, and you might get your passport checked. So they have the infrastructure, then just not using it because now Switzerland is in the Schengen zone. So it is something that could be reinstated.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. And I'd like to thank you for starting the petition. And I'd like to reiterate as well, it's not like you have any other agenda. You are essentially, you mentioned citizens before, you are literally a concerned citizen who is interested in sustainability. So, well done for starting it up. And listener, if you're motivated to try and encourage a train service between the UK and Switzerland, I'm going to put a link to the show notes and you can sign that petition. Nadine, thanks very much. And, we'll be following this story very closely.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for inviting me. And thanks to all of you who can sign and share. That's so important. Thank you. Cheers.
So that was really interesting. I don't know what the chances are. Evidently, there's a lot of new train services cropping up all over Europe. And Eurostar actually confirmed last week they're going to increase their fleet size by 30%. So positive news for train travel. Let's see how that goes. Also positive news, the British Freestyle Championships took place last weekend at Snowdome Tamworth. It's great to have this event back. And I am really pleased to confirm that our next episode is going to be an interview with the co-founder and organizer, Stu Brass. So we're looking at the history of that event, which has given many Team GB skiers and snowboarders their first chance to experience competition, from Jenny Jones, medal winner, and Woodsy to newcomers like Mia Brooks and Kirsty Muir. They've all taken part in the Brits in due course. And finally, listener, if you haven't listened to episode 211 yet, that is my chat with Paddy Graham. I strongly recommend it. He is such a nice guy. He is super interesting. And listener, you will definitely have seen some of the videos he's made. You might have seen a viral one last year of some skiers who go over a chairlift. They jump over a chairlift. It was filmed in Mammoth. And you probably will have seen something called The Ultimate Run by Marcus Ada. And he was involved in the filming of both of those. And if you want to know how they made those films, and have a listen to that episode. Right. We're going to move on to Martina now. I mentioned earlier that on the other side of the world, their winter is just starting up. And I know you're an expert on the Aosta Valley. That's when you've talked about that on the ski podcast before. But originally, you're from
Argentina. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Not Chile. So whereabouts did you live in Argentina?
Buenos Aires, like half of the country. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so if you're living in Buenos Aires, so Argentinians, it's relatively easy to get over and ski in Chile?
Yes, usually you fly. For Chile, you fly is 2 hours flight. Not all Argentines go to Chile. They mostly go to stay in Argentina. That's the reality. And I grew up going to Argentina, skiing in Argentina. But I started working. I visited once when I was living in Aspen. I visited Chile, and then I started working for Portillo.
Portillo. Well, I appreciate your pronunciation there.
Portillo for Chileans. For Argentines, we do the SH sound. Portillo.
Well, I mentioned, that there has been some early opening because of snow. But what are the usual season dates?
June to October, depending snow. Usually it's 25th of June until October the 12th. But there have been some seasons when the June start has been delayed because of lack of snow. But I used to take all the press farms there, and sometimes it was a bit sketchy with snow. And then in October, the last years when it has been a bit yes or no, they were stopping a bit earlier, like end of September. But usually 25th June, 12th October.
Okay, and let's just get a sense of the geographical side of things. So you mentioned flying. You would have flown into Santiago.
Yeah.
And then how far are they from Santiago?
Well, Portillo is 2 hours 14. It would be the northwest, where Valle Nevado is straight to the west is 1 hour 15. Valle Nevado is a road that you have to check the times when you can go up and down, mostly if you're doing on weekends, because the road is super thin. And sometimes there's not too much space for like lots of traffic going up and down. So they have 59 hairpin turns to get up there. And
59? Yeah,
I take tourists. I used to take lots of groups. Even the Ikon brothers, Ikon and the Deloriers, all the group were spraying in that bus because it's really scary.
Because I mean that puts it into context. I mean, people will look at Outdoors and or maybe Medisimo, another resort that has access through a lot of hairpin bends, but that's about twice as many. So you need an experienced coach driver and have strong nerves as well to go up there.
It's better just to go with someone that takes you, the transfer, because you are not going to use your car up there. So it is pretty scary to get up there, but people do it for the day. People from Santiago go up and down.
Okay, and just to get a fix for the different resorts, maybe let's focus on Portillo.
Okay,
Portillo,
yes.
as most people have seen it. So I read somewhere that it's a bit like a private ski club. Is that really the case?
Yeah, they say that because in reality there's one hotel and 2 annexes, and they have 450 beds and 450 employees. So you get a 1-to-1 ratio, and they do allow some day skiers to come, but not too many. So the mountain is pretty much empty. You have 4 meals a day. So people is eating all the time, pretty much included. And you don't see too much people. There's never queues.
So there's hardly any queues because there's a limit on the number. There's only one place that you can stay, and maximum of 450 people. And so if you're staying there, then you're saying they're limiting the amount of tickets that they sell every day. So you wouldn't want to just drive up there on spec and the hope of going skiing for the day.
No, I guess that I don't know, because I've never been a Chilean going up there. I go for the week. Usually in Portillo, you go for the week, Saturday to Saturday. And in the shoulder season, you can do 3 and 4 days. They separate, but usually shoulder is beginning and at the end of the season.
And what kind of skiing would you expect there? How big is that area?
I did some checking here. Now it's 500 hectares, which doesn't tell me anything to me. But the hotel is in 2,800 and goes all the way to 3,322. But then you have pieces that go down, passing the hotel. So you go to the Caracoles. That's another hairpin turns, but they are the international route.
So you just said the hotel itself, is it 2,800 plus meters?
Yeah. So if you go there, don't drink a pisco on the first thing you do because it goes to your head straight.
Yeah.
You do feel it.
Yeah. Because, I've stayed, most people would kind of perhaps be aware that Val Thorens at 2,300 is the highest ski resort in Europe. And I've stayed, in various places. I've been to, Breckenridge and stayed in the States where you're up around that altitude. But if you're not used to it, it can be quite difficult staying at that sort of height, can't it?
Yeah, it is. I feel it in the eyes. My eyes get really red. The altitude is a killing thing.
And you mentioned the size of the area, 500 hectares. To us in Europe, that means less. But what type of skiing are we seeing there?
Well, the mountain itself has 14 lifts, I'm saying. Yes. So you just have some fixed grip chairs. You have a triple, a double, and then they have this kind of crazy lifts that they call va-et-vient, that they are, how to explain it? It's just a line because of the high prone avalanche area, no? So they have it on the walls on the side with the couloirs. So there's just like a little line that they can dig up if it gets under the snow, and has a bar and has 4 or 5 baby poma lifts, like the J bars I heard. You put them like that. You put them between your legs and you have to grab your poles, if you're a skier, if not snowboarder, and grab the bar, and it goes like the clappers up, like crazy. And then you don't stop like that going up. You stop with your back to the abyss. And you have to start going, whoops, sideways to leave the thing. And the last one has to throw it and go sideways. And then it goes down again to pick up the rest one.
I'll have to track down a picture of that one.
It's amazing. There are videos. There's lots of fun. I can give you a link if you want.
Okay, cool. So there's not many lifts, but the actual descents themselves, are we talking about this is like an off-piste backcountry kind of destination?
Yes, there's lots of all these extreme skiers, Chris Davenport, Kim Reichland. You have heli skiing that's very cheap. In Chile, heli skiing very cheap compared to international rates now.
Oh, and they get good snowfall in general across that kind of 4 month period.
They claim they have 6.8 meters of snow. The thing is, like, the snowstorms there are long and not too many. So maybe you have a couple meters for a snowstorm. So that's pretty common. And then you have lots of like blue sky days, and it's dry, and the snow can be amazing. It can be bad too, no? But
yeah, but 6.8 meters over a few months sounds pretty good, and I love those blue sky day scenarios. Okay, so that's Portillo or Portillo. The other resort we're looking at, a bit closer to Santiago. So you said like just an hour to get up there. Valle Nevado or Valle Nevado. What's that like?
Well, looks like Les Arcs. If you see it, because it was the same architect that contributed to the program in Les Arcs, the Chilean architect. If you go there, you think you're in France. So it has like 3 major hotels coming on sideways like a star, and has some apartment buildings. So when you're going up the mountain, you see this kind of at the top of the mountain. So the hotels are too a little bit higher than where the lifts go. No? What you have with Valle Nevado is that it's connected to La Parva and El Colorado. And then if you have good snow, maybe from Farellones, you can have a little lift to get up there. But it's 3 areas. It's called the Free Valleys of Chile. So it's the biggest terrain in South America. They're talking about, Valle Nevado has 2,224 acres. That is a double, pretty much, well, a bit like 1,000 more than Portillo.
With heli skiing, evidently that opens up the area. And it's interesting you mentioned, called the 3 valleys of South America, let's say, those 2 other resorts, El Colorado and La Parva. I noticed that La Parva was actually bought recently, acquired by an American company. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Altitude, it also goes very high. Is it as high for the accommodation?
Yes. Look, it goes from 2,860 meters. The accommodation is a bit higher than that, and then it goes to 3,670. That's it. Yeah. The hotels are on 3,025 meters, so it's high. And then you do have La Parva is a bit lower, 2,600. So with La Parva, that has been bought by Mountain Capital Partners now, the same company that bought Valle Nevado last year, well, they have 1,000 meters vertical drop.
And I noticed we're talking about, these acquisitions. A conversation that we've had a lot on the podcast of late relates to the different passes, the Epic Pass and the Ikon Pass. And I noticed that Valle Nevado is included on the Ikon Pass.
Yes, it is on the Ikon, and depending the category of Ikon Pass you have is what you get. With the Ikon, the normal one, you get 7 days, and then you have the base, and the base something else called. You have 5 days, but if you buy as Valle Nevado, usually you go and you stay in the hotel with all the all-inclusive. Well, all-inclusive is with breakfast and dinner. So they give you 10% discount on your packet. With the cheaper pass, is a bit less, but well, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I often refer to, the listenership, let's say, of the podcast, and around half of our listeners are outside the UK, across the world. And I think we're going to see more and more that Ikon Pass, Epic Pass, maybe Magic Pass and other passes are becoming more and more relevant to our listeners. They're certainly becoming more popular. Lou, this is just an entire coincidence, but I believe that you also have been, you mentioned it earlier at the top of the show, you've been heli skiing in Chile. Where did you go?
Yeah, we went to the same area, at Portillo, we call it. We were based out of Santiago, and actually it was the Alaskan team move over there in the summer months. So I was with Edge Heli, and we had Wendy Fisher skiing with us, but Kim Raikkonen was out there as well, and a very beloved guide, Greg Harms, was there at the time with us. So we were out mostly off-piste, entirely off-piste actually, but we were mostly there to get the lines. But it was a fantastic experience. The snow, when it came, it came in meters. It felt like, I think it was a huge snowfall overnight, but it was a very, very different summer skiing experience. Wonderful.
It sounds tremendous, and certainly, Martina, very interesting listening to that breakdown there. I think I can't remember. I had one of the listeners, it might be Paul Bond, who recently requested that we covered some of the southern hemisphere skiing options. And last year I went out to Australia and skied in Thredbo and Perisher. You can track that down. I'll put a link into the show notes to find out about that as well. But that's brilliant, Martina. Thank you very much. If it's okay, I'm going to move back to you again now, Lou. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was not to discuss your heli skiing experiences in Chile, but in fact, because I noticed an article in the Telegraph not so long ago where you were talking about becoming a ski club rep, a rep for the Ski Club of Great Britain. I thought that this was really interesting because I think that they actually stopped their repping program entirely a while ago and have revived it. So I wanted to know, I guess, firstly, what prompted you to go down that route?
Yeah, good question. It was around about lockdown, and I'd long heard about ski club reps as a really good way to share your love for skiing, but also really to explore new resorts and get off-piste. And it was particularly an off-piste ski club with great expertise.
So what is the process then to become a rep? How do you go about it?
So first of all, you sign up to the reps course, and obviously you have to make sure that you've got the right amount of skiing behind you. And it's a 10-day training course that they base out of Teen pre-season each winter. It's an absolutely fantastic course. This was a big part of the reason that I was really keen to become a rep. If they hadn't had that course, it wouldn't have appealed to me, because I think it's super important to be safe off-piste and have very clean and clear guidelines on that, because it's not a guided role. It's now, as you say, social skiing rather than repping. So actually we should be moving away from that term repping and saying it's a social skier. Obviously now we are very boundaried, which is really important with ski guides and mountain guides. And on the course you had 2 mountain guides, and we had the avalanche geeks, Mike Austin and Bruce Goodlad. And Bruce is a big part of the ski club and their off-piste safety. And for me, that was a really important part of the course. So it's broken down in the course into various parts. For example, you learn how to social ski, which involves looking at the map, working out if you're skiing in a resort, how far a good day's skiing, how far it takes between lifts, what lifts will be open, checking the snow types, checking the avalanche awareness in the morning, but right through to you do this American avalanche awareness course, which for me was a big part of the appeal.
Just want to kind of clarify how that works, because you mentioned the ski club had ski leaders from back in the day, and when I was first doing ski seasons, I was first employed by Bladen Lines as a ski guide, and I took the guests around, and we didn't go off piste, but I guided them around, and I get the feeling that that's probably quite similar. It was a social type of thing, but there was never any off piste. Now, that avalanche course is clearly a big part of the Ski Club of Great Britain repping course, but you're not taking people off piste at all, are you?
Yes, like you, I skied with Powderburn back in the noughties as a ski host, it was called back then, on piste. So you have the social skiing on piste element, but you also have the now own fresh tracks. So they do these off-piste holidays where a rep might be brought in as a back marker. You've got the mountain guide. So to have as much mountain awareness as you can is really important. And even in the hosting in resort, for example, in Verbier, there are all the itinerary routes. Those are routed on map off-piste routes where there is risk of avalanche. So it's important to have the know-how.
Yeah, well, I think evidently it's very important. And I think many people own a transceiver. Hopefully they've got a probe and a shovel as well in their backpack, but they rarely know how to use it. Probably a while ago now since I've actually done this, but they have the the Arva parks in different places in different resorts where you can actually test it because they have transceivers hidden. But I'm guessing that was part of the course. Then you had to do the thing to track down a transceiver, and were you timed for that?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I think any keen skier, well, you're obviously a very keen skier, but we have done those various different courses. And it's so true. I mean, the amount of people that ski with transceivers in their backpacks or ski with transceivers and don't actually know how to use them, or slightly scared about using them, having not really done a course for a long time. Yeah, this course covers all of that. It's a lot of theory. I mean, I think we had 30 hours of theory with it. But on the mountain, yeah, absolutely. It was, hiding your transceiver, using different types of transceivers to find it, working as a team to find a body. Doesn't sound very nice, but in a mock avalanche situation. And yes, that's timed.
I mean, this is entirely the point, isn't it? I mean, this is why you're doing it, because we're aware that if someone was to, be in an avalanche and they're buried under snow, then their chances of survival go down dramatically. I think it's after 15 minutes. I can't recall the stats off it now, but, time is a factor.
Time is such a key factor. And it's not about being timed and trying to pass time. It's about being as swift as you can. If you're skiing with friends, family members, which, you invariably are, every second matters. And it's about going through the routines, so the rigmaroles, so they're so imprinted that you don't have time to panic. You step into action, you make those emergency calls, you get your team working as effectively and as swiftly as possible, because every second matters.
During the course then, which I think you said was 10 days in team, so it's quite a time commitment, but presumably there's a cost commitment to that as well. How much does a course cost?
Yeah, it's a time commitment and a cost commitment. It's not a cheap course. I don't know what the latest costs are for this year, but it's around about £3,500 for 10 days of skiing. And I'm not promoting the ski club with this. Personally, I think it's the best investment any skier could make is going to go and do one of these American avalanche awareness courses. And therefore, the cost of a week skiing versus that, it's one of those things, if you're a keen skier, you absolutely should be doing.
The upside to this is that once you've done the course and you've qualified, you can then be a rep for the Ski Club of Great Britain. So you can be allocated to a particular resort where you spend a sustained period of time out there.
Exactly. It's seen as a ticket to a gateway to an awful lot of skiing. And as we know, majority of the reps are in their 50s or potentially, older. I think the average age is around about 54 now. And they are looking to do a lot of skiing. So a lot of the reps get a lot of time on the snow each year. It's not paid. you get your expenses paid, accommodation, skiing. So for the keen skiers, I don't know about ticket to Valhalla, but it's a gateway to more skiing.
That is the upside, ultimately. So, quick question. I don't even know the answer to this. Have you actually done any repping, formally since you did your course?
Yeah, I've done 2 weeks, but so I was out in Verbier as a social rep out there. I would really like to get on some of the off-piste courses. It's finding the time, and for me, it's not as easy. It's one of those things that you hope has kind of got a long-term vision. It's great to be in that community.
I found it interesting that you applied in the year that the ski club celebrated, I think it was their 120th anniversary. And I actually also spotted, I know there's a link with Martina as well, I'm going to ask her about that as well. But I spotted that an article about that. Were you at the Café Royal for their 120th anniversary?
Yes, I was, which is a real honour. And actually, and just to skip back to that, you've just reminded me, actually, one of the key reasons that I signed up was that the ski club announced that they were upping from 18 to 24, I think it was, resorts with a view to becoming 30 resorts in the forthcoming years. So rather than it being let's call it a social ski rep position in decline, it's something they're absolutely pushing out. So it seemed a good time to do it because it's in that growth phase. Yes, 120th anniversaries at the Café Royal were very special. That was, of course, where it all began for the ski club back in May the 6th, 1903.
Excellent. And Martina, you were there as well, because I mentioned in the intro that you are an artist and you produced something specifically for that anniversary. Is that right?
Yes, they asked me if I could do a time capsule about the place where it was born, the ski club of Great Britain, that was the Café Royal, and the future. So I have no idea what to do, to be honest, at the beginning. Like, oh. And I was going to paint live. So I started at home because I was never going to finish it if not. And yes, I did just like a picture of a skier of today with the Eigermont and Jungfrau, or wherever they go, no? And then I have Sir Albert Lund, that's the name, no? On the side here with old skis and another couple of old skiers. And then I have in a little corner, like a representation of the Café Royal too, no? How it was at that time.
Brilliant. And where is that now?
The ski club is their thing.
Right. Okay. And is it quite unnerving trying to, produce something with lots of people looking over your shoulder?
I don't know. When I started painting and getting my zone, it was okay. I just wanted it to come. And I think that when I put the ski at the last minute that it came like the red out, it kind of pops out of the picture. And people are like, oh, yes, I was seeing how it was getting on. And yeah, the people were very nice.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, it sounded like a fantastic evening. And Lou, that's really interesting to hear about being a ski club rep or a leader. I look forward to seeing where you go next. Maybe you can report back for us from the mountains, wherever you do go. We're just going to move on towards the close now. I enjoy all feedback about the show. I like to know what you think, listeners, especially about our features. So please contact me on social at The Ski Podcast or by email theskipodcast@gmail.com. Robert Stone contacted me. He said, I recently discovered your podcast, found it very enjoyable. And he goes on to say, I skimmed through previous episodes and was surprised to see you've never covered the British favourite of Souserdue. It suffered an unfair reputation as a Benidorm on snow resort in the 90s after a sneering Wish You Were Here episode. It's a charming old town with a fabulous ski area linked to the huge Via Lattea, which in my day used to be called the Milky Way. Lou, have you ever been to Sousie or the Via Lattea?
No, but funnily enough, that was where it all began for the ski rep course back in 1963, I believe. It's, meant to be great off-piste, but no, I have yet to go there.
Oh, I couldn't have picked it better. Martina, ever skied down that way?
No, only been in Torino and passing by, but no. I heard it was very good. That's very good. That you should go.
Well, I have been to Souserdue. It was probably in about 1978 or something like that. So I imagine it's probably changed a little bit then. But amazingly, we've covered so many different places in 212 episodes of the Ski Podcast, but I don't think we've covered any of the resorts in the Via Lattea Milky Way. So that will have to change. Robert also asks, Any update on whether the Ladies Outdoors gondola link is going ahead? Well, I'm going to refer you to episode 93 when I did an interview with the mayor of Ladies Alp, whose name escapes me now, but I'll put it into the show notes. He explains the complications of it, but he says, it will happen one day. Paul Bond, he contacted me about the Bakira episode. That was episode 210. He said, as ever, great listening. I skied all over Europe, finally skied in Bakira in March. Plenty of challenge with a unique vibe, but also easy for a mixed ability family to ski the same mountains and meet up. He supplied a top tip, which is to hire a car from Toulouse and stay in the valley in Viella. I'll probably pronounce that wrong, but he says it's a great old town with lots of accommodation and good value places to eat. He's definitely going to be going back. And finally, Haida Fakaki from My Ski Buddy contacted me to say, I hope it's been a successful season. Thank you for a very enjoyable podcast. And he actually has an app which you can download at myskibuddy.app if you're looking for people to ski with. Now, if you like the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'd like to thank a user called Every Nickname Is Taken. He gave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and he said, or she possibly, I like listening to the ski podcast when I'm driving up and down the country. There's a great variety of guests, tons of useful information. It also reminds me of all the places we've skied and boarded over the years, while also giving me new ideas where to go next. So keep going, and maybe one day we'll meet you on the slopes. So thank you very much for that. And listener, if you'd like to leave your review, that would be amazing. Now, there are now 217 episodes of the Ski Podcast to catch up with. Amazingly, for the close season, 171 of those were listened to in the last week, including one person who listened to our very first episode, which was recorded all the way back in September 2017. So maybe that's you, listener, and you want more ski chat to keep you going between seasons. And I guess it's obvious, but there's so much to listen to in our back catalogue. Just go to theskipodcast.com, search around the tags and categories, and you're bound to find something of interest to you. I mentioned earlier our audience, our listeners are all over the world. According to those stats, 44% of our listeners in the last week were in the UK, 25% in the States, and the remaining 31% spread across the rest of the world, including Argentina, but not Chile, Singapore, and Kenya. So wherever in the world you're listening to this right now, thank you for joining us. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. But for now, I'd like to thank my guest today. Lou, thank you very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
And Martina, gracias.
De nada. Thank you for having me.
And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.